what do you want to choose? A memorable evening in which everybody is in great spirits? Or do you really want to shift to honoring someone in which he never hears what he's meant to everybody?
All right, so I'm with my dad, Walter Green, and my name is Jason Green. And we are going to talk about something we contributed to do together recently that I thought was really special. It was called A Living Tribute. And Dad, why don't you describe what is a living tribute?
Well, for me, it was kind of the culmination of a year-long journey that I took. It was also a product of my professional career and also some 3 recent life experiences that all came from those elements.
And how did you come up with it? Can you elaborate a little bit more?
Yeah, so, well, the first one that was of more recent vintage was that I recognized the power of expressing gratitude. I don't know if everybody's yet read that book, but many people, thousands of people have, called This Is the Moment. This was the story of me taking a year of my life to go around the country and around the world, actually, to sit down with people who've been really important to me. And I learned the power that I got from expressing gratitude to those individuals and also what it meant to them. That was the first thing. The second thing is I spent 30 years in the conference business. And one thing I learned, if nothing else, was that there's a power that comes from group expression. Never forgot that. And then the third thing were really individual experiences. One is a dear friend of mine who wanted me to do a celebration of life. I was his executor, and I thought, oh, really? Okay, I'll do that. I said, but wouldn't you like to be at the party? And he looked at me, he said, well, yeah, but that's not the way it works. I said, no, that's the way it normally works. What about if you're 74, let's make a 75th birthday party. Let's make that the real party. And then you'll get to hear what everybody thinks about you. As it turned out, it was a wonderful party. And a year and a half later, he died. I kept my word. I did my celebration of life. But forever, I had a reminder of, what do you want to choose? A memorable evening in which everybody is in great spirits? Or do you really want to shift to honoring someone in which he never hears what he's meant to everybody? That was the second one. And actually, that was the first life experience. And then the second one was I went to one of these celebration of lives recently, went on for 4 hours. There must have been 75 people that came to express what that person had meant to them. And I learned a lot about the person, but kind of felt badly that I wish I had known that when he was alive. And then finally, your mother had a milestone birthday. And I said, no, this isn't just going to be a birthday party. This is going to be a celebration of her life. And I did it just this January. Those combinations of experiences gave me this idea of a living tribute, which is a group celebration.
Sounds great. So who is this for? Who is this relevant for, do you think?
I personally think it's for anybody, maybe you call them senior, been around for a while. It's not necessarily intended for people who are in their 20s and 30s. It's for people who have experienced a life and touched a lot of people. So I would say primarily for people who've had a chance to influence a lot of people. It could be put on, of course, it will be put on and can be put on by the younger folks, but it would typically be designed for someone who's had a lot of experiences.
Great. Can you talk a little bit about the elements of a great living tribute? What is the criteria of success?
Yeah, so, well, here are some of the outcomes that I found. One, I learned this also before, is we think we are who we perceive we are. Now, I think you ask most people, tell me about yourself. They will tell you, but that's their perception. What we don't really, and the individual doesn't fully appreciate, is he is known by the perceptions of how other people have regarded him during his life. And for me, successful outcome is, wouldn't we all want to know who we are going to be remembered as rather than our own limited self-perceptions? So that would be the first thing. Wouldn't it be a great way for us to learn about our impact on others in our life? Second, successful living tribute would be that they would have a chance to tell you what you have meant to them. Most people say, I'm going to do it. They don't get around to it. By having a living tribute, you won't have a regret for things you wish you had said. Another successful aspect of it would be people would learn a lot more about the person. So you would learn about the person you care about from others who are expressing their regard for that person. I guess for me, I'd like to make this not so uncommon as it is currently in our society. So that would be important. And I guess the final element would be technology now allows you to record these events. And, getting this emotional expressions from so many people is a lot to take in. And the ability to record it, to me, and to enjoy it and to share it magnifies the impact of it.
Mm. Tell us a little bit about the experience of being the recipient of this, because we did a trial run, so to speak. What was it like?
Well, I describe this as really one of my finest hours of my life. I knew I should set the stage for this particular inaugural tribute that you were kind enough to organize and facilitate. And the idea was there were people who shared me in common. In this case, they were long-term mentees of people I've worked with and currently work with that we invited for them to be given an opportunity to express what I had meant to them, what I had learned from them, what we experienced together, or any other insight they would have liked to have. And once again, to hear this one-on-one is pretty powerful. You invited like 9 mentees. Hearing that within an hour was an overwhelming experience. It actually, for me, gave me an indelible impression of an important part of my legacy.
I'm going to show a picture actually of a snapshot of the experience and talk to us a little bit about some of the folks on this and what it meant to you.
Yeah, so these are a collection of extraordinary people. I began mentoring them. 6 of the 9, actually there are now 10. One was a late entry, which was a whole surprise and separate story. But of the 10, 7 of them, I started coaching, if you will. This was just a passion of mine. It was not a business, it was just a passion. 7 of them were in their 20s, 3 of them were teenagers. And on average, I've worked with them for 15 years. And we have young adults of good friends of mine. I have people who I worked with through nonprofits. I have people I met through a variety of circumstances in life. I have relatives. There's a whole collection of extraordinary people who have deeply touched my life.
So I wanted to read a couple quotes from the attendees, because I think in addition to the experience you had, they had some extraordinary experiences as well. I know you wanted to share a couple reactions, but here's one. What a wonderful experience it was to be part of such an impressive group of people and get to hear their stories and honor you together. I am still filled with so much joy from being surrounded by similar stories of the impact you have had on so many people. Here's another one. The love was tangible through the screen. It was a very powerful experience to be part of. And then third, the experience for me was amazing. I literally kept crying listening to others share how you have impacted them. It was beautiful. Is there any other reactions you got? I'm sure you had some debriefs with folks after the event.
Well, words like heartwarming, empowering, fantastic, special. I was so moved by the experience that it was really a bonus to hear what it had meant to each of them. And so that really solidified my desire to create an awareness of the power of this concept.
So let's talk a little bit about the how. So we know the why and got a sense of what the end result is. How does someone go about thinking about doing this, and what are some of the key elements to?
Yeah. So originally, the thought was that this would be an in-person event, that you would maybe choose a milestone birthday or create an event. And then in the last 60 days, we've had this isolation and distancing that obviously made the concept undoable. And it was thanks to your suggestion that this could be done via Zoom, which wouldn't require anybody to travel. And what was so amazing about this, it was Wednesday of the week in which you thought we could do this, but just give me the email addresses. That day you send out the invites, and 72 hours later, actually less than 3 days later, we're gathered together, people from Albany, New York, Philadelphia, Washington, Northern California, Southern California. We're all together. Everybody showed up. Everybody was excited.
100%.
100% of the people showed up. And many of them had used this technology before, but in the cases where they hadn't, they were able to pick it up very quickly. And I think it's important, probably with anything that sounds so powerful, is to make it as simple as it really was. So here we are. We only took, the intention was to take an hour, it took an hour and 15 minutes. We had 10 people. You surprised me with one guest. So that's why I said 9. 9 were invited and 1 came in, and that's a whole story into itself. But it added another rich dimension to the experience. In any case, you introduced yourself. You agreed to facilitate the meeting. Since the people in this case didn't know each other, and I think in many family gatherings, everybody probably would know each other, but in my case, the mentees would have no reason to know each other. And so we took a minute or two for each one to say who they were, how long they've been connected with me, and something interesting about themselves, which gave everybody a chance to kind of get to know each other. And then you suggested as the next step, actually, I, of course, did say a comment or two at the beginning that I should say, in which I told them how important each of them were to me. It was a welcome from me that actually preceded their introductions. Then after that, you asked them to share an insight or two, or an experience or two, or just how did I impact their life? And so each one got a chance to take 3-4 minutes to try and highlight what it was and why I had been so important in their lives. And finally, I had the chance of telling them at the end what the experience had meant to me. And could we have used a little more time? We'll do it again. It was that rich an experience, but it didn't have to take more than an hour, I'm sure, with people that you know. Ideally with a group that you may not know, maybe 2 hours. But think of this. Within 72 hours, we created for a mentor, in this case, one of his finest moments, and for the participants, one of the great times of their life to be able to express something that they've always wanted to express. How much more simple and how much more powerful could an experience be? And it's for that reason that I'm taking the time to try and communicate this concept of a living tribute, a group celebration. So for all of those people, especially the possible grandparents or senior executives or people who have led religious organizations or presidential support groups, whatever that is, this is an amazing vehicle for having happen all those things I set out to do. And that's why I'm trying to convey this concept so others can enjoy this remarkable experience.
Well, I can speak as somebody that got to experience it as a facilitator and as your son. And for me, it was very, very powerful to learn things about you that I'd never known before, despite knowing you my entire life, to see the impact that you've had on others, and just to feel so much more connected and closer to the people who have been important in your life. And I will also say it took very little work on my end. I mean, I sent out an email calendar item, hosted the Zoom conference, asked a few questions to help facilitate the time together. And for me, it was one of the most extraordinary returns on that time that I've ever had in my life. And it was so wonderful to do it with you. So I wanted to tell you how special it was for me. And thank you for allowing us to do it, because it's not always easy to be the recipient of those things. Some people may feel awkward or uncomfortable with having people express that, but it was really, really meaningful to me. And we've recorded it so people in the family can see it, and obviously they can see it again. There are people who had a chance to share. So I just think it's going to live now in perpetuity as another statement of all of the wonderful things you've done in your life to have a positive impact on others. And I, for one, will always treasure it. So.
Well, thank you very much, Jason. Clearly, you initiated it, you organized it, you did it as you described very easily. And I wanted to comment on that last point. Many people are hesitant to be the recipients of compliments and acknowledgments and gratitude. And yet it's very important for people to express it. Now think of this. If you preclude somebody from expressing it, you're denying them the ability to give a gift that they want to give. And it's with that realization that I said, I need to allow them to give me a gift, but in the process, I received an extraordinary gift. So thank you, and I'm happy to have the opportunity to share this message. And if it can influence the people in anywhere as close to the way it's influenced me, it will be a great gift to them. And thanks for taking the time.
Yeah.
It's clear that the person being honored is not going to be the person who organizes it. It's going to be someone who wants to honor that person. And we have to all understand there's an initial hesitancy for people to say, oh yes, I'd love to be honored. So if you offer it to him or say, I'd like to, and give it to him kind of like, would you like it? I think you may get some of that hesitancy. And so what I would suggest is saying, listen, here's what I am organizing and doing, and here are the people that I'd like to bring, because here's the things that I'm trying to accomplish when we all get together. Is there anybody else you would want to add to the list? And you can give me their email address and I'll include them in the invite. And that doesn't really give them the option to say no, because really, even if they say that they'd be uncomfortable, I'd even do it without them and send it to them.
That's clever. Yes. It took me 2 or 3 times to convince you to do it. So I imagine that everybody would have this hesitancy.
Totally normal. It is very uncommon experience, and that's a very common reaction to why it's an uncommon experience. We've got to get over that obstacle in order to give them this remarkable gift, and to give the gift to people who want to give the gift.
Well, I'm glad you did it, and I'm glad we pushed the issue. And it's actually, I think it's a great idea to do the presumptive close. Look, I'm doing this. I'd like to invite 8 to 10 people. You give me the names or I'm going to guess. So
perfect.
Is there anything else you wanted to add? Any lessons learned from this experience about how we might want to do it differently next time, or anything you would add to it?
Oh, that's a good question. Anything that's done for the first time, if you can't figure out how to do differently, you are missing some opportunities. I think for people who didn't know each other, it took a little of the time to get them connected to each other. And so I probably would have not counted that in the hour. That would be the introductory part for a half an hour. I think also we could have added some time at the end for some shared experiences where some could pursue the questions that they may have had when someone else said something, or ask for a little bit more surrounding circumstances to appreciate the point, because the person took 3 to 5 minutes is not a lot of time. So I think conversation at the end would have also been important. Those are the two things. Probably would have taken 2 hours and allowed it to be a little bit more complete in the ways that I've mentioned it.
Yeah.
But having said that, I wouldn't trade it for the world. It was captured in an hour and 15 minutes, and I treasure it, will always treasure it, and not for the things that I could have done differently, but for the things that we did.
Yeah. Any other advice in terms of the number of people or the kind of relationships that you think would be particularly meaningful, and how to organize the thinking around it?
So the number of people, we did it with 10 plus you, 11 people. And that allowed for everybody to participate in a relatively short period of time. I think it's ideal for that. I think a family gathering, you could do 20 people because they all know each other, and you can also do a little longer period. You could do it for an hour and a half or 2 hours. I think it probably could be done with a larger audience in which a limited number of people, 10 or 15 people, spoke, no different than you would do a celebration of life when the person wasn't there. Think of it. You can do everything you could do in a celebration of life, and you have all these bonuses. So you could have 500 people on it, wouldn't matter. So the range is extraordinary. I was talking to someone today when he was asking me, would you tell me about what the experience was? He has a group of presidents that have been meeting for several years together. They all know each other very intimately, but never and only until one person dies will they then get up and say what that person meant to them. He said, well, it makes no sense to wait.
Any final advice for somebody that's considering this?
The last piece of advice I have is the simplicity of it. Don't make this seem so complicated. If you do it reasonably well, it'll be brilliant. It is not difficult, not with today's technology. Maybe gathering 50, 75, or 100 people from around the country and organizing tributes and doing that. Okay, I understand that could take months. That's what I did. I understand that could take months, but for this, you spend a few hours max, right? On the whole organizing, inviting, facilitating. So this is something that somebody could literally do in 5 hours and change so many people's lives. Don't make this so complicated. Just do it.
Is there anything else about the current time that we're in that you think makes this even more relevant and important?
Oh, yeah. Well, listen, I think this is relevant for all times, even when we're back to some kind of normal. But now, it's almost an imperative that we don't miss this opportunity. As of this date, 12,000 people who thought they would be here last 2 weeks ago are not with us any longer. There are thousands of people who love those people, who wish they had said something to those people. Don't be one of them in the future. Take a moment to do a living tribute, a group celebration to somebody who's really been important.
Well, thank you for sharing the experience. Thank you for sharing the opportunity. And I hope we inspire some other folks to take advantage of this extraordinary opportunity to express gratitude to the people that are most important in your life and to have something that lives on forever to appreciate them with. So
I hope so as well. And thank you for spending the time today, Jason.